Hi friends and new friends, and welcome to the fourth and final episode of the Darren Tapp Files. Today we're going to be talking all about Dash technology and how it's improved over the years since 2014. We're going to go into all its aspects and how each aspect has improved over the years. It's always an interesting talk when it comes to Darren Tapp. I'm always happy to have him on the show, and today is no exception. I'm Christopher Carruthers, also known as Tao of Satoshi, and you're watching Cash Alternative TV. So what is Cash Alternative TV other than that catchy jingle? Well, it's a show about cryptocurrency with a focus on Dash, which aims to be a digital cash for the world, an alternative to cash. If that's something that you're interested in, you want to learn more about Dash, or just want to hang out with me some more, don't forget to subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss an episode. Now to the topic of today's show. When Dash launched in 2014, it didn't have the level of sophistication it does now when it comes to PrivateSend, InstantSend, governance systems, syncing, and all other aspects of the Dash experience. How has it improved over the years, and what goes on behind the scenes technologically to make Dash a top-notch experience? Today we're talking with Darren Tapp, Assistant Research Professor at Arizona State University, and he's going to give us all the details. Next. Welcome back to the show, Darren.
Thank you for having me, Christopher.
Yeah, so as people know, this is the fourth episode of the Darren Tapp Files. So we've already done three interesting episodes with you. And today we're going to be talking all about the evolution of Dash. So you're Darren Tapp, an assistant research professor at the Arizona State University. So we're happy to have your expertise on board.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. So let's start off the top of why do you think it's important for a cryptocurrency to evolve and remain current with its technology?
Well, it's just like you want to stay above what other people are doing. It's like any other industry. If you get to a certain level and you stay there, it's possible that other people could come up with better things or be a better product. And so it's kind of good to keep progressing and progressing in a way where you can still be the best as time goes on.
So why do you think that the big boy, Bitcoin, the original founder of cryptocurrencies, why do you think they haven't tried to do any new features or any new technologies? They're kind of just trying to shore up what they have.
Yeah, they've tried to bring on the Lightning Network, which kind of brings on a whole extra level of complication, and they did not choose to increase the throughput of their existing system. So that's what they did, and why they did it. It's not really clear why they did it, but we could speculate that some corporate interests maybe got control of the development team, and they're trying to push some solutions that might be more profitable for a company than for the users. This is demonstrated by the liquid network, which they call a federated blockchain, but the whole point of Bitcoin originally was that it was non-federated, and so you get all these kind of centralization problems with the liquid network, and there's a way to extract. Economists might call it rent seeking to extract money from this. That one thing that attracted me to Dash is Dash funds its developers directly from the network, so that can avoid at least that can avoid the possibility of a conflict of interest, because the developers are working for the network and the network is paying the developers. Kind of everybody's interest is aligned. When a company pays for a lot of the development of a public project like Bitcoin, it's certainly the case that conflicts of interest can arise.
Yeah, so there's a theory out there that maybe it's Blockstream that is intentionally handicapping the Bitcoin network, so people will want to use Lightning. What do you think about that theory that's out there?
Well, that's something that's out there, and it's hard to find evidence against that claim. There were some original developers like Gavin Andresen, Mike Hearn, who were very instrumental in the early part of Bitcoin. Very useful. They did a lot of productive work. The graphene protocol, I call it Gavin Andreessen's his idea baby, and so they were more or less pushed off the project, and they were certainly in favor of bigger blocks, and it in my mind they're very reputable developers. They're people that you want on your project, and to see people like that kind of pushed out to another project or to out of the space altogether, that doesn't bode well for the remaining people in the project, I think, or the project as a whole, the Bitcoin project as a whole. So, so yeah, I think they were the canary in the coal mine when they started to leave. Then the project is kind of going
okay down. So you yeah, so you would say that improving the technology is good for the end user experience. Also with security, as we went over in our last episode, it's good to stay on top of the new technology so you can have a better user experience. So how do you say that Dash has done a good job overall of improving its technology over the years since 2014?
Well, I would say Dash recently has, well, the first thing they've done is they implemented the masternode network. And that's one solution. That's not necessarily the best solution, but it is a solution that works. And so what the masternodes are, there's particular nodes that are paid by the network to run, and because there's this masternode network, the network as a whole is able to offer more services. And early on, the services that were provided by the masternodes were InstantSend and PrivateSend. So so that's one thing that Dash is doing to stay current. But that was a long time ago. Now, once there's a masternode network, basically if somebody submitted an InstantSend transaction to the network, it would get signed off by, like, 5 masternodes would sign off on it, and then basically the consensus rules of the network would change, that it would invalidate a block with any transaction that conflicted with that locked transaction, that InstantSend transaction. So basically, it's extremely hard to double spend in that situation. With Bitcoin, it was hard to double spend, and then with InstantSend, it's extremely hard to double spend. One thing that's happened in the background of Dash that Dash has done to improve their network is they've implemented BLS signatures. These are a type of signature that work well as an aggregate signature. That is, if you have like 5 people that you want to sign off on, 5 signing off, they can produce an aggregate signature. So it's one signature that all 5 of them had to create. And then BLS signatures work well with threshold signatures. And that's something that could be like a 3 of 5, or Dash is using threshold signatures as a 240 out of 400 signature. So if not everybody that is participating in the signature signs off on it, but if just enough that's over a threshold signs off on it, then they can produce a threshold signature. And a big advantage of BLS signatures compared to Schnorr signatures, which if you've been paying attention to the BTC camp, they like to talk about Schnorr signatures. A big advantage of BLS signatures is that they're non-interactive. For threshold signatures, you have an interactive session where you do a distributed key generation, and after that, you can produce the threshold signatures without talking to your neighbors or anything. You could just put the signature share out there, and as long as there's enough that get in the same spot, then that threshold signature can be made. Aggregate signatures, the savings are even better. You never have to have an interactive session to do an aggregate signature. You can just say, hey, I want to sign off. Like if you have 5 participants, doing a 505, they could just say, hey, I want to sign off on it and do the partial share. And then if the other 4 do the same, that's done. With Schnorr signatures, you kind of have to announce first you want to sign, and then they have to agree on some information, and then you can start doing the signature shares. So Dash incorporated a new type of signature that the masternodes use, that is just better than what the BTC camp is considering. Now, the BCH camp also did implement Schnorr signatures in their chain, and there are some advantages to it. They don't need to, with Schnorr signatures, you don't need to change the public key that's used for payments right now. With BLS, you would. And Dash Network's not using BLS signatures for payments, so it's kind of non-issue right there. But with Schnorr signatures, you can just keep using the same public keys. The BCH literature will say that's an advantage. And then so the Schnorr signatures that BCH has implemented does save room. Like if you had a transaction where you're spending from 3 inputs, you can spend that amount using fewer bytes. And so the Schnorr signatures on the BCH chain will actually make your transactions smaller, which can make your fees smaller, and it can also make the whole throughput of the network more. So there are advantages of Schnorr, but for the use cases that the Dash network had in mind, BLS was a much better choice. And now that the masternodes have a BLS key on them, they just have to have one set aside with them. They announce their public key when they register, and so now that that's the case, the masternodes can do an aggregate signature for InstantSend transactions, and so that makes it so much easier to check the transactions, and so that allows every transaction that's submitted to the network to automatically be treated as an InstantSend transaction. So and that provides a huge amount of security, because if you're a merchant and you're receiving a payment, it's not like the customer has to opt into it. They actually cannot opt out of InstantSend. So if you see the transaction there, and if you have a client running, sometimes you'll see the little key next to the transaction, which means it's been InstantSend locked. And so as a merchant, you can be very secure about that transaction when the customer walks out the door. And in order to upgrade every transaction to InstantSend, that wouldn't have been possible with the signature scheme they were using before BLS, or it would just taken too long. So so that's one advantage that Dash is doing, and they've leveraged that. Now that the masternodes have BLS keys, that's also used for chain locks as well.
Okay, so this is a talk about the evolution of Dash. So as we all know, that Dash started off as a privacy coin in 2014. That was their big value add, was to be a privacy coin. And the way they did that was through PrivateSend, which is a decentralized coin mixer. So what did PrivateSend look like in 2014 when it first started?
2014, the default was 2 rounds. And so you would say, I wanted to submit a transaction to the network and have it PrivateSend. The masternodes would actually prepare that transaction for you and put it together with other people that also want to do a PrivateSend. And in 2014, PrivateSend wasn't being used that much, and so now what's happened with PrivateSend is it's being used more, and kind of the idea is you need a big enough anonymity set. You need enough people to use it so that you can't be singled out as the only user of PrivateSend, or if not enough people use it, it might take a while to mix your coins, like each round. And so now people are using PrivateSend more, and I think with the most recent upgrade, the 0.15 upgrade, they took away the ability to just be in the background, mix your coins. The reason why they took that away is because they didn't need the liquidity providers anymore. So that's one way it's getting better. It's kind of more organically growing, so that it has a big enough anonymity set. And another thing that they've done is they upped the total number of rounds by default. There was a paper written that was investigating PrivateSend, and since the default was 2 rounds, it was investigating the security 2 rounds, and it found that they was a little bit concerned about if it was secure enough or private enough with 2 rounds, and so but that same paper had good results for more rounds. So after that paper came out, the default was raised to a higher number. So we're keeping along with the research. There are some. I think people in the Dash space, if you're interested in the Dash project, if you're a contributor to the Dash project with code and all that, I think one thing to keep in mind or keep an eye on is what the Bitcoin Cash people are doing with Cash Fusion. It might be possible that you could keep a PrivateSend transaction private even from the masternode that prepares it. So I'm hoping that the Dash team will look at incorporating some of those, maybe some of those features that Cash Fusion has into the Dash PrivateSend going forward. So yeah, well,
I'm speaking for myself. If I'm the developers of Dash and I'm looking for outside advice, I'm definitely going to take your advice, because you're very learned about these things. And if you're telling me that I should be implementing this, I'm probably going to look into implementing it.
Yeah, so I imagine it could work the same as it works now. Like you still have your PrivateSend transaction, but they use they do it in a way where you can commit. You can commit that, okay, I want to be a part of this mixing transaction, but the masternode won't know who's doing what part of the mixing. So anyway, so that's it. I think Cash Fusion has that. So I wanted to look into that more.
Yeah, so that's PrivateSend. That sounds like PrivateSend has improved a lot over the years. What about InstantSend? InstantSend was Dash's other value add when we're trying to become more compatible for payments. And this was definitely a good thing to do to become compatible for payments, is to have instant transactions.
Right.
So what did InstantSend look like at the beginning, and how has that improved over the years?
At the beginning, you had to opt into it. And when you opted into InstantSend, you would pay about 10 times the fee that you normally would. They tried to keep the fee under a penny, so 10 times the fee would be under a dime. It's not, it's not that severe of a fee, but when InstantSend started way back in the day, they did a multi-signature, but kind of like a multi-signature transaction on chain. Now it's produced by taking one signature from each participant. And well, if you wanted to check that, you've got to check, if there's 5 participants, you got to check 5 signatures. And signatures are pretty quick to check, but at the same time, now you're checking 5 times as many. So with InstantSend, they've upgraded to BLS signatures so that so it's possible for just doing one InstantSend, to verify one InstantSend, you can use one signature. But BLS signatures have another feature where you can actually verify several signatures at once. And so I'm not 100% sure if they're implementing this, but you could maybe you could verify 100 InstantSends in one signature. The way BLS signatures work, you can just take them and kind of put them together. And so that's allowed, and the fact that for one InstantSend you don't have to check 5 signatures. You only need to check 1 signature with BLS signatures. So so that's allowed every transaction submitted to the network to be automatically upgraded to InstantSend. There is no fee increase that's needed for InstantSend, or what it's not. You can pay the same minimum fee as you would without InstantSend. And so these are very big. These are very big improvements, I would say, right? Because now you can't opt out of it. It's not possible to opt out of it. And if you were trying to double send, that's the first thing you would do, is opt out of it. So the person trying to double spend doesn't have that option. You might compare what Dash is doing with their InstantSend to what BTC did with their replaced by fee, where they allowed a user to submit a transaction again. It would be a double spend with a fee. And when that came on the BTC network, that was a long time ago. It might have been 2014 or something like that, maybe 2015. That made me nervous about using BTC because the security model has gone down, had become worse. With Dash doing InstantSend, the security model is going up, which is what I want to see. I don't want to see like a step backwards. So the replaced by fee was absolutely horrible. There was a video that came out a few months ago where somebody was actually double spending, and it was kind of easy. They could do it from a phone. So that's kind of ridiculous. When Bitcoin started, you had to, if you wanted to try to do a double spend, you wanted to basically have a server running somewhere so you could have your double spend queued up and have a server broadcasted pretty much as soon as you broadcast your first spends. But anyway, so
yeah, like I just had I just had the CEO of AnyPay, Steven Zeiler. He was just on the show a little while ago, and he was saying that there are apps, like you were saying, where you can actually double spend from the app. And I just thought that was ridiculous. It's basically throwing a nuke into the whole process. And I'm like, why is this a thing? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, it means that BTC can only be used for like large payments, but if you're using BTC for large payments, isn't it also helpful that you can break that large payment up into a lot of small payments? I don't. Anyways, yeah, I'm not quite sure. I don't agree with those design decisions that they did. So
definitely not. So let's talk a little bit about how Dash's syncing has improved over the years. I've always thought that Dash was pretty fast in syncing comparatively to other cryptocurrencies. But this latest release that they put out, version 15.0, is like ultimate fast. It's like the most fast I've ever seen. Like I just turn it on and it's like, boom, off to the races already. So what's making Dash's syncing improve over the years?
Well, I think it's just good old optimization. Just making sure you're connecting to nodes and you're using the bandwidth efficiently and all that. Another reason that syncing is so fast is because there are so many master nodes. There's around 5,000 master, maybe 4,600 right now, master nodes. And so when you start your node from home, it connects to 8 other nodes, and there's a good chance it's going to connect to a master node or 2. And master nodes are hosted in data centers, and data centers have a symmetric connection, meaning their download speed's the same as their upload speed. So when you're downloading, the server is uploading. And on your commercial internet, the uploading is usually the slow part. If you try to attach, several hundred, maybe 100 megabyte file to an email, it might take you a while to do that. And it'll take longer than downloading the same file. That's just how commercial internet works. Most people viewing the internet need the download speed to be pretty quick, and the upload is not that quick. But when you have when you're connecting to a server, and you're downloading, the server is uploading to you, and because that's a symmetric connection, meaning the download's the same as the upload speed, you can get those blocks pretty quick. If you wanted to just do an experiment and check syncing, you could try to sync a Litecoin node. There's very few publicly accessible nodes on the network. So if you sync that, you're not going to really hit as many data center nodes as you would with Dash. Just it's probabilistically speaking, and Litecoin hasn't really had that much development happen lately. So Bitcoin Dash has taken advantage of some speed ups that they can do. Our ASU team is hoping that someday Dash can use Velocity, basically use BitTorrent to do the initial sync of the chain, and that should speed it up even more. In the early days in Bitcoin, there was a wallet called Armory that used a BitTorrent type thing to get the first big chunk of the blockchain, and it took a sync from a couple days down to maybe 5 hours, which is a really great time saving thing. So we think that if you made Velocity native and used it for syncing, that there's even improvements on what Dash is doing now, and improvements that we can have from what Dash is doing now, and so I don't think it's even over yet. But the Dash chain current blockchain is actually not that large right now, so I think they've got it in a pretty good sweet spot of optimization and so for ease of use. So if it gets bigger, maybe we'll optimize more.
For sure. Well, let's touch on a little bit about what you said about the BitTorrent thing. Is there any attack vectors that you can see for if we start to use a BitTorrent for downloading?
You would want to think through the DOS attack vector. You would want to think through that. But I think that could be dealt with. Graphene has a DOS vector that was mitigated. Xthin had the DOS vector that was live, but they fixed it. So, that was a long time ago. So right now, all those propagation protocols work very well. I think if we use Velocity to propagate blocks, the whole thing is it breaks the blocks into symbols and transmits the symbols. And so the hard part would be like basically your malicious actor could transmit a whole bunch of symbols, and then but they could just be gobbledygook in the receiving node. It might take them a while to figure out who's doing that. So to answer your question, you would want to think through the DOS vector. I think it's a little bit harder to solve on the Velocity if you were using the Velocity protocol, but at the same time, I think it's possible to mitigate that DOS vector.
Yeah, so that might be some other improvements we might be looking at in the future when it comes to scaling. So that'd be good. Let's go quickly because we have a whole episode dedicated to security. If you are interested in looking at this episode, it's the third episode of the Darren Tapp Files, the most recent one that we did before this one, and it's all about security. But just quickly, let's go over the overview of security and how Dash's security has improved over the last 5 years.
So quickly. All right. So over the past 9 years, so if you look at Evan early on, talk about the security of Dash, and he's basically asked, why are the master nodes secure? And he'll say, well, the master nodes have to stake 1,000 Dash, and so their economic incentive, they're incentivized to not, ruin the Dash network, because that would ruin their stake that they put up. That's what Evan said a long time ago. Now, if you look at the Dash network today, the security model actually doesn't use that economic incentives as its security assumption. The security network of the model uses basically as an assumption that less than a third of the masternodes are malicious. And so with that assumption, even if somebody didn't care about their stake, they would still need such a huge amount of the masternodes to attack the network. Whereas 5 years ago, having 2 masternodes would have maybe allowed, and it would have had a bit more than negligible chance of attacking the network. So the security behind the scenes, it's gone from 2 nodes can attack the network with a reasonable probability and now it's, even if you have a third of the nodes, you're going to have trouble attacking the network. So that's the short of it. So
okay, perfect. So if you want to go more into detail about security, like I said, check out the last episode of the Darren Tapp Files, Security and Digital Currency. It's a good one. It's a little long, but it's chock full of information. I recommend watching it. So let's talk about the Dash network now has used all these improvements over the years, but let's talk a little bit about what Dash platform and future developments that Dash is working on now. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was the big topic of today. Everybody wants to know how blockchains are going to scale. So how is the Dash network planning on scaling to incorporate all these cool features that they have on a larger scale?
Well, the first thing they're doing to scale is for the new features, they're putting them on a different chain, a platform chain. So now, and I believe only the masternodes need to maintain that platform chain. So if you're running a node at home, there's not, you get these new features without much more demands on your computer. Okay, the demand is pushed to the masternode network, and they're compensated, so that should be a fine thing to do. So that's one thing Dash is doing by putting some of its extra payment information, like as a word, extra payment information outside of payments, just the actual payments. It's putting that on the platform chain, and so that's one way Dash is scaling. Another thing Dash has done is they paid for research that was done, and we kind of know exactly where the hurdles are going to be. We know right now they can double the size of the network without having any trouble, and I'm sure as the use of the network grows, we'll be able to come up with ways to come over the other hurdles that have happened that are in scaling. One big unknown is we don't know how much the computer power is going to increase. It's generally been increasing, and if it keeps increasing, then the research that we did years ago, actually that would scale along with the processing power for a bigger network than what we published in 2018. So that's kind of the unknown. We can assume Moore's law, but anyway, so there's certain hurdles. Like if Dash became very popular, the UTXO would grow, and that's generally kept in RAM, and the price of RAM can get expensive. So that's like an example of a hurdle. So, but the thing is, we know where these hurdles are, and when we get close to them, we can mitigate them before we need them, before we need to go beyond that level. So that's what Dash is doing for scaling. It's putting its extra features in another chain, the second chain, and it's actually doing research to figure out how much they can scale. Okay, and compare this to BTC.
Let me ask you some questions. Go ahead.
Oh, the BTC, they just said we can't go any higher, and they never really determined what limit they actually could go to, which is kind of annoying.
So let me ask you some questions about block sizes. So Dash has a 2 megabyte block size. Bitcoin Cash has a 32 megabit block size, I believe. And Bitcoin Cash SV has an even bigger one, like in the 120s or 128 megabytes, I think. So like, what are some advantages of having bigger blocks, and what are some challenges that are associated with having bigger blocks for a blockchain?
And yes, the Bitcoin SV blocks now are unlimited. they are unlimited.
Wow.
So what are some advantages of having bigger blocks? Well, the main advantage is that you have more throughput. You can handle more transactions. And I kind of use the analogy of a power plant. If too many people want to draw power from the power plant, you'll end up with these brownouts where they can't provide all the power that people need right now. And so with the power user, the power energy customers, they might decide to use power later when there's a brownout period. So and it's same with a cryptocurrency network. With the block size, that basically is the total amount of output, total number of transactions per second that you can handle. And if the network gets over, transactions get submitted over that network, then transactions will have to wait till the next block before there's room to get in. And so I kind of think of that as being in a brownout in power wise. And then if too many people submitted transactions, you could have actually some transactions not go through. So that's more closer to a blackout. But Dash raised its block size from 1 megabyte to 2 megabytes. So that basically makes it difficult to have a brownout, especially from organic use. I wouldn't expect to ever have a brownout from organic use currently. I mean, I hope in the future we'll need to go bigger to avoid that because people use it.
Absolutely.
And so disadvantages of bigger block sizes, it can your blockchain can grow without a bound, and so that can make your syncing. Every node will need to sync all those transactions, so that can slow down syncing. That can up the amount of storage that every node needs to use. So there are disadvantages having a bigger block size. But again, it's kind of just finding a nice sweet spot where all the users can happily get their transactions included, and somebody that's trying to bloat the blockchain won't try at the same time because it won't really do much. So that's kind of the game.
Okay, so you're saying that there's going to be two different blockchains. There's going to be one for the transactions in the Dash network, and there's going to be another one for all the other information. So can you give us like an overview of what the platform chain is going to be looking like? Like how are the blocks going to be? What is the block time going to be? What are the block sizes and stuff like that?
Yeah, the thing is, when you're doing transactions, there's a certain amount of security you want for the the payments and all of that. And so if you start bringing in all this extra functionality, then you've got to do this you basically got to go through and re-audit how secure your transactions are and all of that. So one reason to, because we know the transactions are secure the way they are, if we can just, put the extra functionality somewhere else, then we don't lose any security on those transactions. Okay, does that make sense? Now,
yep.
One of the big things that will happen in the platform chain is you will be able to register a username, and I believe when you do that, it's actually going to put a transaction on chain that will register a username. Now, what the platform chain could be used for is to store information about the user. Maybe you want certain stuff to be associated with you, like you're Christopher, but you could say, oh, I'm also Tao Satoshi or something like that. You could have extra information on this platform chain about the user. You'd have the connections between the users on the platform chain. So that way you can take all of this extra stuff off chain. And so all of the research we've done for how it scales, that still applies. You know, research that's done to make sure it's secure, that still applies, because this new platform chain introduces new types of transactions that are actually on the main chain, the payments chain. New types of transactions, but they're limited in scope, and so that way you just limit the attack surface, if you will, by kind of keeping the scope of your payments chain limited. It's easier to understand the security model of it. With like, for example, Lightning Network, it's so complicated that, you know, the few times they've had to update, oh, this is a security upgrade, and it was a real security upgrade. Like, people could lose money and things like that. And one reason I think you see that is because the Lightning Network is so complicated. There is so many moving parts, all that. You would not want the evolution to get so complicated that you can't keep track of the security. So it's kind of like less important information. Like, the payments, you got to have 100% secure, and then some other information is put on another chain, so that way you don't compromise the security of the payments. That's good.
Okay, so we've got the scaling, we've covered how Dash is handling security. Let's talk about something else that's very important for the end user, is the ease of use experience. So what is Dash going to be doing with the Dash platform to make it look like a PayPal or a Venmo experience for the end user? How is that working behind the scenes? Because that's something that's going to be very important for if we want mass adoption.
You'll register a username, and then you can even put a picture with that. And that's one thing with the platform chain. It's the picture won't be on the main chain. It's going to be shared in the masternode network, and it might not even be in the platform chain. It might be anchored to the platform chain. But I believe if you query 10 masternodes, one of them will have that picture. That's what they're going for, and or one of them will have the information. They're for information like that takes more storage. They're not expecting every masternode to store it. They're expecting 1 out of 10 to store it. And so you could connect with so once you've got your username registered, you can connect with your friends, and then when you go to pay your friends, you just say type in their username and pay them. So, like, I recently did business with somebody. They helped me with my logo, and haven't made that public yet. But they sent me an invoice with this QR code, and I had to scan it and pay. With what Dash's new system, maybe I could just connect with them, and then when it's time to pay, I'll just say I'll pay their username, and the behind the scenes, everything would still work like it normally did. There would be a transaction that goes to an address, but the user would just never see that address, and the payment would just get taken care of. So that's really what I'm most looking forward to from this platform chain, is the ability to connect with people and make payments. And so it's basically going to allow a social network on Dash that's already a payment network. And so I think that's going to bring new users. I think people are going to be just interested to be on this social network. It's kind of the opposite tax that Facebook is using. Facebook made a social network, and now they're trying to bring in a cryptocurrency. So Dash has made a cryptocurrency, and they're going to try to bring in a social network. So we'll see.
So, Darren, I'm not sure if you saw this headline. I covered it on a recent CATV Live. they're talking about how the Ethereum network had Ethereum addresses, had Ethereum names, and people could track all the transactions from these Ethereum names. So I was asking somebody in the Discord if Dash is going to suffer from this problem because we're going to have usernames as well. But he assured me that we wouldn't. Have you been keeping on top of that? Because I know that when you register a Dash username, you have to reveal an address, right? But if you private send that, then you should be okay. But after that happens, it's not like the addresses, you can find out who owns which address, right? Like it's just the client you have at home which would figure that out. Is that correct? Am I right in saying that?
No, in the early stages, there was a discussion about how to avoid that. And specifically, somebody registers a username and then you make payments to that username. How can a third party with a full node and access to every chain and everything be able to figure out which payments went to who? And so I know that was discussed very early on in this project. So that there was a discussion about how to make payments private. One thing that was discussed, I'm not sure what their final solution was, but one thing that was discussed is that when we make a contact, when we contact each other on the platform, and then we can make payments to each other. One thing that was thought through was to maybe we would use our own HD keys with that connection. And when I connect with somebody else, I would use different HD keys. And HD key stands for hyper-deterministic. There's HD wallets. So there's hyper-deterministic wallets. So when I say HD key, what I mean is it's a way for it's information that's shared that we both can make an infinite amount of addresses. Okay, like a sequence of addresses. Okay.
Okay.
And it's even better than that. We can make a sequence of HD keys. So the way HD keys work is like you have one HD key, and then you can use that to make a sequence of HD keys. Now you have a sequence of HD keys, and you can use each one of those to make a sequence of HD keys. Right, so now you have a sequence of a sequence, okay. and it never stops. So you can make a sequence of a sequence of a sequence of a sequence. So basically, you have different HD keys for different tasks. So you have one connection, you have one HD key that's shared with that connection, then a different HD connection that's shared with another connection. So that way, your one connection can't spy on what the transaction you're making with the other connection. It's like you have a different sequence of addresses for every user you connect to. And so that's, in the early discussions, that's how they were going to deal with that. But I know that they were thinking about it very early on, and that's what they came up with. And so when they were saying, when you were talking to somebody in the channel, and they said, don't worry about it, I think they would have solved that. But that's the way
what they were saying is that.
What were they saying?
What he said to me was that they just basically said that you have an address, and the only one that can figure that out is the full client, like the full node that you have at your home, right? So if you're just looking at a blockchain, all you're going to see is addresses. There's no way that you can tie those addresses to the actual username.
There you go.
Whereas in Ethereum, I think the address was tied to the username. You could just basically figure out their entire history.
Right. And this wouldn't be one address per user. It would be at least one address per contact, and it's probably a sequence of address per contact. So that way you just can't do an analysis of a chain, and even if you had this amazing information that this address went to that user, you would still have a lot of privacy because they're not going to use the same address every time. So so that
happens automatically. So
yeah, you're not going to have to program that in. It will just happen. Right.
Perfect. Yeah, because that's another thing going to the ease of use, because right now, if you want to use a different address, you pretty much have to say, I want to use a different address. But if this happens, so it happens automatically, that's definitely tying into the ease of use.
Yeah. So with HD keys, you have a sequence of addresses. So usually, like if you start a new wallet, let's say you did your backup phrase into your new phone, what it will do is it'll check your connections. It'll pull those XD keys, XPub keys or whatever. And what normally happens is it checks the first address. Was there a payment? Yes. Okay. Next address. Was there a payment? Yes. Next payment. Yes. 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 So, and then the SPB wallets normally go check another 20 addresses out. I think just kind of for good measure. But I think with the platform, you wouldn't need to check those 20 addresses out. But the thing is that takes time to check all these addresses. But it's still very possible. It would only slow it down when you're starting up your new phone and putting in your backup passphrase. Like if you're starting a phone from scratch, it might take you a little bit to understand where all the transactions are. But that amount of time is worth spending for privacy. That's what I think. And if you just keep
Absolutely.
if you keep using your same phone over and over, it'll basically have all that information cached, and so you won't have to do that query every time. So.
Okay, this has been a fascinating conversation with Darren Tapp, assistant research professor at Arizona State University. We're talking all about how Dash has improved over the years and all the technology that's gone into it and the future technology that's yet to come. It's been a fascinating interview so far. So Darren, before we go, why don't we just comment a little bit on how you feel that Dash's progress has compared to other cryptocurrencies like maybe Bitcoin Cash, because that's like one of our top competitors right now.
Yeah.
So how do you feel that Dash's project has gone in comparison to Bitcoin Cash?
Well, I would say that Bitcoin Cash and Dash are direct competitors. They're both seeking users that want to perform payments. Where BTC's interested in something else apparently, but so one thing that has happened with BCH, Bitcoin Cash, is that it first forked from Bitcoin, okay, and so now you have a situation where there's a minority fork, and they use the same hash power, which is probably less than ideal because the people, like a lot of the hash power from the BTC chain can go over the BCH chain, which is something you generally don't want to be possible. Anyway, so that's a decision that was made a while ago, and but the fact it was a minority fork is a little troublesome, in my view, from a security standpoint. Another thing I think is they were way too late. When I was looking around the space about who I was still interested in payments, where do I go? Well, I had worked for Dash I already decided that Dash was a good thing to work for. Started to work for them and worked for many months on them before Bitcoin Cash came out. So, if Bitcoin Cash came out earlier, they might have had more momentum with the users. Like the Bitcoin people who liked payments would, like, at least in my case, I was already on the Dash team before Bitcoin Cash existed. And another thing that bothers me is that there's already been another minority fork situation where Bitcoin SV came on to be. And every time you have these minority fork situations, I always think that's bad. That's just bad from a user perspective, because was there replay protection? Was there not? Okay, so if there's not user replay protection, then the users might accidentally replay, which means they try to make a payment on one chain, but they make a payment on both chains, and that's just confusing. Bitstamp did not give the Bitcoin SV to people, so that's just annoying. it's just annoying, and from the user perspective, that's not good. There's all kinds of not good from user perspectives. And now you've got to worry about when you scan a QR code, you've got to worry about, is it this chain or that chain? Bitcoin Cash tried to deal with that by changing the format. But what are you going to change the format every time there's a minority fork? And currently, with the next hard fork that Bitcoin Cash has scheduled, there's a chance that might end up with a minority fork, because they're working on a situation to pay their developers, and if there's too much contention in this decision, there could be another minority fork. The same way Bitcoin Cash came into being over contention on the block size, there could be a minority fork on contention on paying the developers. Okay, now that remains to be seen. That hasn't happened yet. So it maybe they'll go through without a hitch and pay their developers. Maybe they'll go through without a hitch and not pay their developers. But I'm just saying, from a user perspective, it's best if everybody's on the same chain, literally on the same chain. With Dash, it's harder to have a minority fork. And Dash has done at least, recently, at least 2 hard forks. I think 3, actually. But they do these hard forks, but they never end up with a minority chain. And there's a good reason for this. One is because the Dash core group is one specific legal entity that's coding up the things, and there's a lot of discussion and debate over what the changes are before the changes are implemented. By the time they're implemented, people are like, "Oh, good, finally!" So it's not like there's any contention with the changes to be implemented before they're implemented. Another thing is that, like Bitcoin Cash, if they split again, it's overpaying their developers. Well, Dash already pays their developers, so that's already solved on Dash. And then if somebody said, I'm going to make a minority fork of Dash, just to mess with people, I think they're going to have a really difficult time doing that, because now the masternodes are registered on chain at a particular IP. And so if somebody tried to do minority fork, basically all those masternodes are going to most likely going to go with the main chain. And so whoever's trying to do the minority fork is going to have a handicapped network where they don't really have any masternodes, at least early on in the minority fork. And so that might make it hard for people to come over to the minority branch. I don't think that was an intention of masternodes, but that is a consequence. A consequence of having masternodes. They kind of have to go. They kind of can help steer the network in one direction or another. I mean, specifically, like going from 1 megabyte to 2 megabyte. That was a vote that was very quick and done over, very quick. So the Dash network has ways of addressing these issues that the Bitcoin Cash network's just not doing it. And they're basically having all their debate in public, which, I mean, the Dash debate's in public too, but with Dash, there's the vote and there's this finality. And okay, now that's the decision.
Put up or shut up, right?
Yeah, with Bitcoin Cash, they're still going to be having the debate after it goes, whatever side of it goes live. So, yeah, because there's not a final, they're not a final arbiter, which in Dash is the masternodes.
So with Bitcoin Cash, it's death by 1,000 forks, and with Dash, there's still only one because of our governance. So that's definitely a good point.
It could go that way. I'm a little bit okay. So Bitcoin Cash, all right, we'll give you that one for free. That was a minority fork, and so now it's 2, and if it goes to 3, yeah, that's pretty ridiculous, I think. And I'm not counting Bitcoin Gold.
So the advantage is
chain fork anyway. The advantages.
Sure. Yeah. So like the advantages would be that Dash has the primary source of like X11 hash power. Like it has like more than 10 times the amount of its closest competitor.
Right.
So that gives it security, right? For that.
Right.
And it's and also our governance system means that we can actually have debates and have the vote, and it's put up or shut up at that point.
Right.
So that's why there's still only one Dash, where there's still like 3 or 4 Bitcoins right now.
Yeah. So I do think that finality is very valuable, and like George left the Dash community and went to the Bitcoin Cash community when the Dash community decided to stop paying his project. But and there was drama associated with that. But the thing is, now the drama's over. It's like, okay, all right, you want to go somewhere else, go somewhere else. That's fine. And then we've seen some people not be paid, and they still keep working, and maybe they'll get paid the next time. And so, I mean, it's just interesting how people respond and interact with this network.
Yeah, lots of people out there that are passionate for Dash, and they realize that it has the plan to succeed, and they're willing to devote their time even after not getting paid. You'll see some people that take off after they don't get paid. You see their true intentions; all they want is money. But you see the people that are there they would like to have the money, but they also believe in Dash, and that's why they work for it. So thanks very much, Darren, for appearing on the show. Do you have anything else to tell our viewers before we sign off on our final Darren Tapp file?
No, just be careful. Watch the security one. Be careful about Ponzi schemes, and always control your keys. And I hope you enjoy using Dash.
Perfect. Nice words to live by.
Okay.
So thanks very much for being on the show, Darren. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye for now. Well, that was my super informative interview with Darren Tapp, Assistant Research Professor at Arizona State University. It's always a pleasure to have Darren on the show. He has a wealth of knowledge, and I'm quite happy to talk to him. Hope you guys enjoyed it as well. Well, that's it for me today. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and click the bell if you want to see more from me in Cash Alternative TV episodes. Until next time, remember, Dash is a better money for a better future, and that future is getting closer every day. Bye for now.
Alternative.